The latest indictment reaffirms my earlier call that Donald Trump should step away from the campaign for the good of the country. If not, the voters must choose a different path.
Okay, that was one of the most vehemently anti-Trump candidates in the Republican presidential primary, Asa Hutchinson, reading his statement off his phone, making critique of Donald Trump's third criminal indictment. I mean, kind of lukewarm. He did have to read off his phone, right? Okay, maybe Chris Christie did better when he tweeted, or rather X'd, quote, "The events around the White House from election night forward are a stain on our country's history and a disgrace to the people who participated." Okay, accurate. We're getting there. Now let's look at Mike Pence, the man whose life was literally endangered on January 6th. He said, quote, "Anyone who puts himself over the Constitution should never be president." Also true. But that is where the critiques end and the worship begins, because Trump still has plenty of defenders among the primary field, like Tim Scott, who is deeply concerned about the weaponization of Biden's DOJ that he claims is hunting Republicans with something Hunter Biden. And Ron DeSantis, a Harvard Law School trained lawyer who didn't even bother to read the indictment before making it known he will end the weaponization of the federal government as president by, I guess, ordering the DOJ to not prosecute Republicans who break the law and probably something lock up Hunter Biden, I guess. Cue the maniacal evil laughter and the woke. Okay, real talk. What the heck is going on with the Republican Party? What do they stand for at this point, besides tax cuts for the super rich and retribution? I mean, they literally have become a retributionist party, focused obsessively on settling scores by impeaching Democratic presidents for fake crises while defending criminal behavior on their own side. They are howling over a supposedly weaponized DOJ while at the same time promising to weaponize the Justice Department against any Democrat they can get their hands on. Joining me now to try to make it make sense is Rick Tyler, MSNBC political analyst, Republican strategist, and co-founder of Foundry Strategies. Rick Tyler, it is great to see you. I saw you speaking earlier today, thank you, with my colleague Anna Cabrera about this very thing. It was like, can we please see if he's available to come on in the 7 o'clock hour? Because I felt your pain through the TV. I'm just going to let you talk a little bit because you are a longtime Republican strategist. You, in theory, understand this party. But can you explain to me why the people who are running against Donald Trump can't seem to just cleanly say, other than a couple of them, that what he did was wrong and anti-democracy and anti-American?
Yeah, we somehow shifted from this ethics of right and wrong to right and what you can get away with. And I think that Donald Trump typifies that. I think that DeSantis' response was particularly weak. One, he's reviewing the indictment that he didn't even bother to read. And he ought to read the indictment because it's well written. When you read the indictment, it is well written and well put together. And it begins by some legitimate questioning of the election. And you can do that. You can do it through public speech. You can do it through lawsuits. You can do it through recounts and audits. But they exhausted all those. And that's where that's where Trump left reality and engaged in criminal behavior. And it's very well laid out. What's absurd about the indictment is, as you read it, it wouldn't pass for a B movie script. You'd get thrown out of a producer's office if you tried to sell this as a script. Yet this is what really happened, because the whole elector scheme was just so harebrained, and it's really kind of frightening how far it actually got. And it had really serious consequences, and still does. And people need to read that, because the difference between us and a banana republic or Russia or any dictator or despot is understanding that we live in a system that hangs by a thread of the trust of the American people on our institutions, including our law enforcement, including the FBI, and including our election system. But you'd really have to be deranged and deluded to believe that there's a conspiracy large enough to have turned the elections. So they want to have it both ways. They want to say that Biden is incompetent, but he apparently pulled off the most comprehensive election theft in American history or world history, and left no trace of evidence, because remember, 60 court cases were filed and no credible evidence was ever presented. Unfortunately for the Republicans now, this whole event turns into it's going to just exhaust the media time, because the whole election will now be about whether Donald Trump spends a term in the White House or spends a term in the Big House, because there's no other alternative. None of the other candidates will get a chance to compete, and that's what we're faced with. And look, if there were, I wouldn't be tempted by this, but one could be tempted by saying, you can elect a criminal and a rapist, but you get all these great policies like balanced budgets and smaller government and lower taxes and a controlled border and a lower deficit with China and smaller debt. But we didn't get any of those things with Donald Trump, nor will we. And so I don't really understand the upside. And from a raw political perspective, Joy, not just the policy perspective, what has Donald Trump brought since 2016? He's brought the loss of the House, the loss of the Senate, just losing. I just don't understand how they want to keep perpetuating this man who's mentally deranged.
The thing is that part of it is, I think, a fear of the electorate, right? I mean, 7 in 10 Republicans, at least according to the New York Times Siena poll, want the Republican Party to fight for Trump and not to oppose him. And I think they're afraid of those voters. But do you understand where those voters are coming from? Because they lived through the Trump administration, too, but their perception of it is so different. And also, by the theory that they're supporting, Kamala Harris could simply cause Joe Biden to remain president simply by throwing out electors. And I'm not sure that the base of the Republican Party is understanding where their theory ends. It ends with Kamala Harris deciding who the next president is. And I don't think they want that.
Yeah. People should read the indictment for no other reason as they'll get a great civics lesson. Trump should read it because then he might understand exactly how he was unelected as president in a very legal way. Look, it all comes down to leadership. Sometimes you just have to tell the truth, and the voters will punish you for it. But in the end, you got to live with yourself. And I just don't understand these people who know the truth. Donald Trump knows the truth. And by the way, Joy, if you read the indictment, there's actually a lot of good news in the indictment. There's a lot of people, good people, who stood up to this and said no. People who supported Trump, including elected officials in Arizona, including elected officials, including the Secretary of State and the governor of Georgia, including elected officials in Wisconsin, including people in Trump's own administration, including people in the FBI, the Justice Department, and including people in Trump's own campaign. A lot of people did the right thing. Trump did the wrong thing, and 6 co-conspirators also did the wrong thing. And I think they should pay seriously for it, because it's a very dangerous thing of what they've done. And if they were successful, they would have effectively destroyed our country.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you coming on and talking about this. And we will see. Hopefully, your party will somehow revive itself and return to a respect for the rule of law. We shall see. Rick Tyler, thank you, sir, very much.